Minds Nation. Welcome to another conversation, another rich, authentic, natural, flowing conversation, which is like how we like to do things here on the New Minds podcast. And I have never failed you, and I'm not failing you today with an absolutely intriguing guest. I'm going to have a conversation with Paula Prober. Let me tell you a little bit about Paula, and then we're going to dive into a really cool conversation that's all built on a magnificent metaphor. So Paula Prober is a licensed psychotherapist and consultant in Oregon. She specializes in counseling gifted children and adults. That's kind of her niche, her special space. And she approaches it in a very magical way. And one special platform for the conversations and the work she's done are two books that she published. Okay, I want to make sure that I get the complete titles right. And actually, I want to read the whole subtitle because I love the subtitle of especially the second book. So the first book, Your Rainforest Mind, A Guide to the Well-Being of Gifted Adults and Youth, was published in 2016. And then followed up by a second book, Journey into Your Rainforest Mind, a field guide for gifted adults and teens, book lovers, overthinkers, geeks, sensitives, brainiacs, intuitives, procrastinators, and perfectionists. And that was published in 2019. I'm sure you guys can see now why I wanted to read the subtitle. It's magnificent. So, she's a speaker, like I said, a counselor. She does a lot of writing that I've been following for many years on the internet. Always super insightful. I love your kind of holistic, empathic approach to this world of education and gifted education. And as you know, Paula, my specific background in education is in the gifted education world as well. So I mean, you and I could probably sit here and talk shop and lingo the whole conversation, but let's kind of open up this world to everyone who's listening. And it might be parents of gifted kiddos, it might be gifted adults, or it might be people who have no idea whether or not. But I think the way you approach it, you give people kind of like a safe entry point to relate to this, whether they have the label or not. So sorry for that long-winded intro, Paula. Welcome to the podcast. Thanks for joining today.
Oh, I loved that intro. It was great.
Okay.
Thanks for
I've
always wanted to. I'm sorry, what?
Is there anything that you wanted to add that you think I missed that might be kind of a crucial part of the essence?
Well, actually, I don't see kids. I do. Yeah. I used to see kids, but I don't have kids in my counseling practice anymore. I see gifted adults and I consult with parents of gifted kids. So that's just a little correction. But
gotcha. Thank you for clarifying that. Okay, so I want to start with kind of a big basic question. And it has to do with kind of the metaphor that's obviously central to both of your books and to your website, which people can see right there, rainforestmind.com. The metaphor, what does it come from and why did you choose it?
I love that question. So I was a teacher first before I became a therapist. And I was a teacher back probably before you were born in the 70s, in the mid 70s, And so, I was teaching gifted kids in a pull-out program in a middle school, and it was that kind of a lot of teachers were uncomfortable with the label gifted, and how do you define giftedness, and what is it, and how do you identify these kids, and so I really was looking for some way to describe it that would be comfortable for people, where I could explain what is it in a way that people wouldn't, have all those, the stereotypes and the judgments about giftedness. That word is awkward to people, as you know. So it was just one of those moments. I feel like, my brain was really working that day or something. And I just thought, how can I explain this? Would there be a good metaphor for this giftedness? And it just kind of came to me, and it was this idea: people are like ecosystems, and some people are meadows, and some people are deserts, and some people are volcanoes, and some people are like rainforests, and every ecosystem is beautiful and valuable and important, and the rainforest is the most complicated ecosystem, and it's intense, and it's overwhelming, and it's prolific, and it's it's highly sensitive. So many of the traits that we see in these gifted individuals are in the rainforest. It provides, opportunities for the entire planet, or it supports the entire planet, which, gifted people can sometimes do. And if they are able to live their flourishing life, And so, and then the other way the metaphor works is, even to the point of gifted people are often misunderstood. So the rainforest is being cut down, just like gifted people sometimes are being cut down. I say, have you run into chainsaws in your life?
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
So it even works in that direction. And so what I have found is that I will have clients come to me and they will say, I'm not gifted, but I think I have a rainforest mind. They won't identify. Even the gifted people are uncomfortable with that label, but they read my list of characteristics of the rainforest mind and they go, well, I think that's me. And so it just really helps people who are gifted understand themselves better, and the general population feels a little more comfortable, I think, using that label.
Yeah, and it gives you, so the metaphor is absolutely beautiful. I mean, it's poetic, it has depth, it has subtlety. And I guess my next question is the metaphor itself, does it become a tool to help people increase their own self-understanding and work through some of those complications and complexities of being a rainforest mind? I mean, how far can you stretch that metaphor in like a real practical sense when you're working with individuals?
Well, I think just in the idea that it opens the door to them accepting that they might be gifted, and then what are all the challenges of being that person. So it just allows them to accept that they might be complex and in a certain way, and that they. So I don't know if it's stretching the metaphor as much as it just opens a door for people to understand who they are. And the other thing is, I guess I have a funny quiz in the book, where I don't know if you've seen those quiz questions about, do you have a rainforest mind? So it lightens it up. I guess that's one way to think about it.
Yeah.
It's so serious. We're so intense about, gifted children and identifying them. And I have put a little humor into it, so we can be a little more comfortable with this idea of what it is. And so 24 questions that are kind of funny for you to decide whether you have a rainforest mind or not.
Yeah, you stole one of my talking points, because I was going to bring that up. I went, is it the same one that's on the website?
Yes, I have it on the web
quiz. Yeah, I went and I took that quiz. And of course, when you just see quiz on the website, you're expecting kind of maybe one of those trite multiple choice that's going to spit out, your results and your rankings, which is fine. Actually, I love psychometrics and even fake psychometrics, but it's so rich and poetic. And I wanted to make a point to praise you on the way you framed it, because it's full of humor. It's full of subtlety. It's open-ended. It makes you, really force a self-engagement and ask yourself these things. And there's one, and I scrolled all the way down and started looking at the comments, and they're pretty powerful. I'm sure as the author of the site and the concept, they have even more powerful for you. But I was just struck by the number of people who resonate really emotionally with what you're doing and with the metaphor and with the overall sense of acceptance. If you don't mind, I want to read one comment. I don't know if you speak Spanish, but there's actually a comment in Spanish of someone who came across your site and your quiz. And I won't name the name, but it's here public on your site, but I'll just kind of translate it on the fly here. And this person says, I think you're perfectly describing me, and I'm sure many, many others. It's so satisfying to know that what we thought about ourselves was not true, that we're not some rare creature, some rare bug, this person says, that we're not damaged, that we're not broken, and we're not alone. And then this person ends this comment with, "Welcome to this magnificent place, our place." I mean, wow. When I read that, I thought, wow, Paula is doing something that's like really important. It's really resonating with a group of people. And I'm wondering, I want to give you a chance to just kind of react to that. It must be gratifying for you.
It's hugely gratifying. I mean, just you reading that, it gets me teary. The comments on the blog, and then I get emails from people, and I get emails from people all over the world, who just feel heard, finally seen and heard and understood, and it's almost like, it's just very rewarding and touching and nourishing for me, to do that for people who might otherwise, just be lost kind of and not have any, they weren't identified as gifted children in school, or their schools aren't identifying, or they were not high achievers. And so they never thought they were smart. Right. And so it is very, I read the comments and it's very emotional for me, actually.
Yeah, I would imagine. So if you don't mind, I would like to dig a little bit and I have you talk a little bit more in detail about like what is life like as a rainforest mind? Like, why is this such an emotional impact for people to feel like they have a safe place? Like, what is going on in a rainforest mind that makes life different, that presents different kind of challenges? We're not here to necessarily debunk every myth about giftedness. We don't have to tackle that today. But for those who are wondering, how can it really be so bad to be gifted? Can you talk us through the rainforest mind experience?
Well, we'll see if I can do that. What I do every day, I work with these clients every day, and so the first thought that comes into my mind is the loneliness, that so many of them, in a way, they're misunderstood. They're highly sensitive. They have deep feelings, deep emotions. We don't think of, we think of smart people in those stereotyped ways of I wrote a blog post on this recently. They're the Sheldons, they're the kids, they're just dictionaries or encyclopedias, and they can memorize things, and that's how we think of what a gifted person is. And yet, the people that I work with they're highly sensitive, and they have empathy, and a lot of them are intuitive, and they're feeling a lot of the pain in the world. So, socially responsible. And at an early age, right? They are sad about conflict in the world, and they're aware of it, and they're seeing it, and they're perceiving it. And so life is challenging and hard and painful because of all of that sensitivity and awareness, early awareness of what's going on in the world. And so that's what I see. And then on that intellectual level, if they're thinking in really complex ways, and they're making leaps in their connections because they're creative, and then they try to explain it to someone, and so many people don't follow them, don't get it, and so that's very lonely because they're excited, and they're seen as arrogant because they're so excited about some intellectual thing, and it's misinterpreted as arrogance when it's really just intellectual excitement. Yeah. And so those are some of the things that come to mind.
Yeah. So I want to ask a bit of a personal question, if you don't mind. Looking back at your own childhood, do you see yourself as a rainforest mind?
Well, I have been asked that question before, as you can imagine. Yeah. So I have this response. I've known so many over so many years that I kind of know what it looks like, right? And I'm really good at working with them. And what I say is there's a spectrum. There's a continuum of giftedness. Not everyone is genius level or profoundly gifted. Some people are more moderately gifted, and And I make the joke that I'm more like sort of like on the barely gifted end of the spectrum. You know, I mean, it's like, I mean, I think I'm on the spectrum, but I'm not way up there. I mean, and that's just the truth. You know, I just know that based on my experience of all these people. But I have a lot of the sensitivity. I have a lot of the empathy. So those characteristics I'm pretty high in. And I just am, I think those skills allow me to be a really good therapist. And I can certainly understand and have deep empathy for the challenges of people even who are at the higher end. Somehow I just kind of have that. But I don't struggle. I didn't struggle because I was a gifted child who didn't get my needs met in school, let's say.
Yeah.
I feel like I was sort of like, you know, a regular kid in school.
Yeah.
And it's hard, you know, school wasn't necessarily easy. But then again, for a lot of gifted kids, school isn't necessarily easy. So, you know, it's complicated, but I guess that's my quick answer to what you asked.
Yeah. And I might attempt a little sub metaphor here to one way that I look at it, like those different types of high sensitivities that you described kind of in different domains. Sometimes I visualize it almost like a graphic equalizer, you know, like on the old stereos where they give you like way too many choices of the knobs to go up or down and to adjust. And, you know, giftedness does not mean that all knobs are put up to 10, right? It's like there's variation. And I would argue that you, I know you didn't ask for some kind of personal, you know, assessment here, but I would argue that you are extremely gifted in the areas of empathy and that type of sensitivity. And you're enough connected to the other areas that makes you the perfect sort of refuge of kind of safe understanding for those who have the other ones maybe cranked up to 11, let's say. And so, you know, when I look at, I want to get personal with myself now as well, and it might be a good test case and help people understand how you work with gifted adults. So I was one of those kind of lonely, misunderstood, highly sensitive kids. It didn't necessarily look like it from the outside. You know, I was relatively popular. I was actually athletic and had friends, but internally my world was just, you know, to a T, the Rainforest Mind quiz described my childhood. You know, probably like 85% of the questions were like, oh yeah, really resonating strongly. But the experience that I had was like looking at myself from the outside as a younger self, especially as a young student. It described me perfectly. But I feel like I've done so much self-work over the last 20 years. And I know actually I saw a recent blog post of yours that you mentioned 30 years of self-work, you know, and going, right? It doesn't stop. But what I found is there's almost like a meta layer between me and those characteristics now, where I don't suffer from all those characteristics so much anymore because I built up this level of sort of like meta self-understanding, or like I know that about myself. Maybe I've brought empathy to that situation or learned tools or developed in ways that don't erase it. Like, and this is where I want to kind of ask a little bit too about the ultimate goal. I'm still authentic to it, but it doesn't necessarily have to be a point of suffering for me. Does that resonate at all with you as an experience that others have as they do some development work?
Oh, absolutely. Oh, yeah. I think one of my goals is to just help the rainforest-minded people accept themselves as they are, see who they really are, see the multi-potentiality is not a fatal flaw, or is not a, pathology. There's a lot of pathologizing. It's like, that is a cool thing. It's just hard to manage, when you have all the interests and you have all these things you want to do and you love everything. You want to learn so much, it's hard to manage that. So I think what I hear you saying is self-acceptance, understanding who you are as this person. Even though you still might have trouble finding like-minded people, you still might feel some loneliness. You no longer blame yourself for it, or see it as something you have to fix. It's just something that is a challenge.
Yeah.
But you're is there. Your self-confidence is built up. You have that self, I guess just the word acceptance. Because is that what you're doing?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, definitely. And just the way my mind works, speaking of rainforest mind, is I create metaphors for everything. And a metaphor just came to mind that helps me explain it. So earlier when you were talking about the rainforest mind kind of navigating the world with like these hypersensitivities, you know, sometimes they're called overexcitabilities in different areas. Everything's amplified, everything's sharper, everything's more intense. It's kind of like walking around the world barefoot and when everyone else has shoes on, big cushy shoes on. So there's nothing between you and the hard world, right? Whereas, you know, as you develop and kind of do the work, the self-work that we're talking about, it's not that the world has changed or that you've changed, but you have a nice thin layer of barefoot shoes on, or you've developed the right calluses to navigate where it's not painful anymore. Like it's beautiful. It's like a thing of beauty, really, to kind of see, the complexity.
Yeah. That's great. Or you start walking in the grass. You know, you get off the hard surface.
Yeah.
And you go into nature, and you feel your connection to nature and the larger world, and your spiritual guidance or whatever that is, and then you're not alone in a bigger way, let's say. So yeah, that's a great one.
Yeah. So let's pivot just a little bit maybe and talk about rainforest minds in 2020. Speaking of lots of sharp edges and insanity and complexity, what sort of feedback are you getting from the people you work with, and maybe that you know of? I know you don't work directly with kids, about how rainforest minds are coping with just this one avalanche after another of really high stress, cognitive load. I mean, you talked about this heightened sense of social justice that a lot of gifted kids have, gifted people have. And talk about a moment to feel that to your core. Compassion and empathy. Talk about a moment to feel that at a deep level. Like, first of all, what things are you noticing right now? And what do rainforest minds need right now? Because I know there's going to be parents out here who are resonating right now with their own kids and wondering, like, what could I possibly do?
Well, when you say that, I think of, parents taking care of themselves, how important it is for the parent to get the self-care well, I guess that's just the thing, just for it's so hard. I mean, these are just, I don't know what the word is, remarkable times, really painful times, and in so many ways. And so a lot of, just everybody's talking about it, all my clients are talking about it, and suffering, and trying to, how to be effective, how to make a difference, how to cope, how to not be overwhelmed by all of it, right? Because you're sensitive and you have empathy, and you're walking down the street and you're feeling everybody's pain, or what do you do to protect yourself in a pandemic? And it's just, so it is big, it is huge for everybody. But I think the sensitive, empathic people are feeling even maybe more of it, right? So I just wrote that blog post. I think you must have just read that one, because you said I forgot what you just said, but you referred to it. So
the self-work that you did,
yeah, that's where I go back to. I say it's important that you understand who you are as this person with the rainforest mind, and you come to embrace who you are. And then I say, and find out what are you on the planet to do? What is your particular contribution? And I say that, it's sort of like, I don't want to put, big pressure on the gifted person, because they're already feeling all that pressure, to be a high achiever or to do something great, right? Do something great. And So it's not about, well, you have to do something great, but it's like, who are you? And what are you on the planet to do?
Yeah.
What is your purpose? And maybe it's to raise compassionate children. Maybe it's to be the best parent you can be and raise children who are loving and, anti-racist and generous. And I don't know what everybody's purpose is, but it's like, what are you here to do?
Yeah.
Because I feel like, at least the gifted people that I know, there's a level of that social responsibility and if you get that, if you do your personal work, and some of it is therapy, some of it is, you're raised in an abusive home with, it's like, sometimes I think, as humans, we're abusing our own children. I mean, we have a long way to go to evolve, right?
Right.
The next level of development. But so I will tell people who have been abused as children, maybe their job is to heal their family line, to get therapy. Of course, these people are definitely doing it differently with their own children, but if they still have self-loathing or they still have difficulty with their own self-esteem, and some of their old messages of they're not good enough, the messages from the family come to them, then maybe they need to do some therapy to heal the trauma from the past, and maybe that's their contribution.
Right. Yeah, I love that. So, I mean, now you're talking my soapbox, which is life purpose. And when you do the work and the self-exploration and the world exploration to kind of really find that, I use the term ikigai a lot, which is the Japanese, framework for talking about life purpose. It's kind of like reason for being. And when talking personal again, it took me a long time. Like I had several attempts to come up with a kind of a life purpose statement. And that evolves. It's not something that is necessarily you find it and it's frozen forever. But when I finally did find the one that felt just right, everything sort of synchronized. And so much of my suffering sort of dissipated because I was it became like a gravity that could just kind of keep guiding me. And it's also interesting because one of the traits that you've already mentioned is this concept of multi-potentiality, which is a characteristic of giftedness and the rainforest mind. And first of all, maybe for the audience, could you define multi-potentiality again? And then talk about how finding a life purpose is especially hard for the rainforest mind because they kind of think they're supposed to do all 37 things with their life, right? So, all right, I'll let you kind of give an informal definition of multi-potentiality, and then address that.
Okay. It's just the way one way to describe it is having many different interests and many different abilities, so that you don't just have typically, one career, one job for 30 years or one career path for your whole adult life. These people change careers, change jobs, change their majors in college so that they're in school for 15 years or something because, they want to learn about this and then they want to learn about this and then because they love everything, Right. So that's how I would describe multipotentiality. And then, so I will talk to people about not having to have one career or one path. They can have many paths. They can change careers and maybe even more than one life purpose. Maybe you have life purposes, and for this part of your life, your purpose is to do this, but then maybe it changes later in life and then you have this other purpose. So you can even have more than one life purpose.
Yeah.
Right?
Beautiful. In my case, I was able to find a way to articulate it that it included multiple activities and paths and passions, but had this core essence in common. And that for me was kind of the magic formula for now. Talk to me in 5 years and we can, have a different kind of conversation. Okay, so Paula, what I want to do now is approach maybe some more tricky terrain, but we're in a moment in history. Like as we're recording this, it's June 4th, 2020, and it's been a crazy hectic week. We have protests going on around the country. Injustice and inequality is very, very crystal clear. So what I want to do is kind of put the lens of Rainforest Mind in your work on this concept of inequity and social justice. So here, I guess here's my direct question. So this concept of Rainforest Mind, have you had the opportunity to think about or even research or investigate how it looks through different cultural, racial lenses, or how a rainforest mind might manifest in different cultural situations, or just in general? How have you seen, the rainforest mind through the lens, maybe reversing the lens, through the lens of social injustice?
Okay, a couple of thoughts about that. The basic idea that when we talk about identifying gifted children, we are very clear that giftedness is everywhere in every culture, in every ethnic group, in every that doesn't matter the color of your skin. It doesn't matter what your religion is or what your sexual orientation is. Giftedness is everywhere in all of those groups. So that's the first thing. And then I haven't done research, and I live in a very homogeneous town in Oregon. It's pretty white, so a lot of clients are just white folks, and so I would love to have a more multi-ethnic practice, and I don't in the counseling because of where I live. That said, I get these emails from people all over the world. And so in that regard, I do get some sort of multi-ethnic exposure. And I haven't done anything formal, but I keep hearing the same things from, somebody in Brazil or someone in, I'm just thinking of Nepal. I had an email from somebody in Nepal this week. And of course, now I can't think of, but I've had them in Europe and, in the UK. Yeah. And so, and they're all different. They're different from different cultures and different ethnic groups and different backgrounds. And they're all, at least the ones who are writing to me, are sort of saying, this is what happens to me too in my country. Mm-hmm. And sometimes they'll say, we can't even use the word gifted. If you're in, I think it was Sweden, somebody in Sweden, or I had a family in Japan, I was working with. And it's just there are rules about everybody's supposed to be very much the same, and you don't say smarter or you are gifted. You just don't even use that word. So on an anecdotal level, I feel like seeing how this is similar across different cultural groups and certainly, just and again, I have a limited experience. I've had some African American clients, I've had some Latina clients, but not a lot. Just because of my location.
Right.
So I guess it's just So I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, absolutely. And what I suspect, what I expect, is that part of the genius of your framework and your metaphor is that it allows for kind of a more universal, I want to be careful with the word universal, but allows for a more holistic way of looking at what giftedness could be. And, when you were measuring giftedness by IQ scores and trying to get some kind of objective tack on it, that's when we get into all these problems of elitism and disparity. And, it's just a very difficult path. But for me, the way that you framed it, it's very human. It's very it's subjective. It's, I think, I think it's a pretty universal way of sort of looking at those who think and operate on different frequencies in different ecosystems, to go back to your original metaphor, and not to say that any ecosystem is more beautiful than others. There's beauty in all of them, and this particular one, one of your roles, maybe one of your life purposes in this life, is being a source of refuge and empathy for those who have the rainforest mind. So I think that's beautiful. I really wanted to bring that question out, just because, to not shy away from the questions of equity. And we know that there is some, you and I know that there is some research in general about giftedness in underrepresented populations, and that the traits don't always manifest in the same way. So we have to be so careful with sort of these, checklist type approaches. But I contrast that to yours, which is a very kind of holistic, human way of looking at how you're interacting with the world. Okay, so all right, now I want to ask. We'll kind of get close to wrap up here, but I do need to ask. So book 1, Rainforest Mind, you kind of laid out. We'll say you laid out the hypothesis and the theory and explained the extended metaphor. What prompted you to write book 2? Was it feedback from readers? Was it something left inside of you that didn't get into book 1?
Oh, well, I'm so glad you asked. So I would say book 1 is the more in-depth book, and a lot of case studies of clients in therapy. Book 2 is really a compilation of blog posts, so it's very different from book 1. And I have had people request people who like something concrete to hold in.
Yeah.
And the blog isn't organized by topic. So I took the most popular blog posts, organized them by topic, and put them into a book so that people who like to read books can read the blog that way. So it's the first 4 years of the blog. And then in the categories of the chapters, I have activities you can do at the end that are more journal writing kinds of activities, personal growth kinds of things. You can take perfectionism, and here are some ideas about how you can explore perfectionism in yourself. And it's just a quicker read and a simpler book. So I suggest to people who would like to educate their friends or family or teachers that the second book is a book that somebody could get into who's not necessarily interested in the depth, but wants an overview. And it's the blog, so it's funny. It's not all serious. And,
Yeah, right. Almost like an anthology sort of feel.
Yeah. And in a small way.
Yeah. Okay, and then I guess the follow-up to that question is there a book 3 and kind of in this series, or is there maybe a new thread that's being born in your rainforest mind right now?
Yikes. I don't know. I love to write, and the blog is very, very satisfying for me. And I think that to be continued. I think I'm sort of looking at my life and where I'm going and my experience, say, in relationships, and there's an issue for a lot of gifted people about being in relationships and how do you find friends and how do you find partners. That's kind of an ongoing question that a lot of people have, and so I don't know. We'll see. But I can't. Yeah, no, there's nothing specific that I'm working on.
Yeah, and even if you had one, I would totally respect you not wanting to share it. I know there's some superstitions among writers about not revealing too much. But yes, but I love the blog will continue. Oh, and sometimes I think about maybe doing some, not a podcast, but maybe some video, some live stuff, or some want to get together. They want to meet each other. They asked me to do an online dating service thing, for people. I said, wow,
that's not, that's way above my pay grade, right? So I won't do that. But maybe an online class or something where people can talk to each other I'm not sure, but so that has been something that I've thought about. I don't know where that's going to go though.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, it'd be interesting to see the next progression of how you can kind of take this platform you've built and this powerful metaphor that is rich in so many ways, and like see in this new era that has forced us all into brand new virtual corners and roads to see where it might fit.
Yeah, well, that's another thing. I think that I'm thinking that way too. Looking at, again, sort of that question of how do I contribute? What's the next thing?
Yeah.
How is all of this changing us, right?
Yeah.
How can we create a better world out of this, right?
Yeah.
So I am thinking about that. And I have this whole other thing. You know how gifted people have all these things that they can do. So I have this other little thing that has to do with sound, making sounds, it's sort of like a spiritual-ish thing that I'm exploring that too. And I don't know.
Okay. Hold your horses here. We just might have to have another podcast episode. One of my other things is I'm a certified sound healer. And so I'm very fascinated about this power of vibration and things. So we might have to have a separate conversation about this one. Wow. I can't believe you brought that up. That's fascinating.
Well, we'll talk later.
Okay. Yeah. An offline. So, but in the meantime, to wrap up, I just want to honestly, sincerely from the bottom of my heart, I want to thank you for taking your gifts and sort of the way that you've evolved into therapy and creating this safe space for people who have this way of interacting with the world that can be so lonely and challenging, and creating just this refuge. I don't have another word for it right now. So please keep doing what you're doing, however it may evolve. Stay on mission. And everyone watching now, go to rainforestmind.com. They have your email right there, Paula. They can reach out directly to you via that email. I really recommend people go to the site and look at the quiz. They'll see how kind of joyful and interesting it is and fun it is. And then there's more background about the books. And also, like you mentioned, the blog is just so rich. So they can subscribe to the blog and get it regularly. So thanks for coming on. It's been such a good conversation. And we're definitely going to talk more on more topics. Okay. Thanks so much.
Are we done?